Thank you. Technical producer credit to Matt Adams and Mohammed. Until I am not certain what I'm doing. Here we go. Okay, it says live on Facebook. Perfect. Scroll down to be able to see comments. For comments on Instagram, but maybe I will set it up to.
Well, yeah, because what the Instagrammers are going to see is that.
Yeah. And this is why we troubleshoot. Now playing. But then I'll also want this. Perfect. This is why we troubleshoot. Now playing. And because there's a bit of a lag, I'm going to get to hear my own voice so much tonight. My favorite thing. Perfect. This is why we troubleshoot. Now playing. And because there's a bit of a lag, I'm going to get to hear my own voice so much tonight. My favorite thing. And because there's a bit of a lag, I'm going to get to hear my own voice. Oh my gosh, there's a second lag. See, this is why we troubleshoot. And because there's a bit of a lag, I'm going to get to hear my own voice. Oh my gosh, there's a second lag. See, this is why we troubleshoot. What is this never ending?
Got stuck.
I think one of them has to be coming from, because doesn't that have a speaker in it?
This?
I got stuck.
Or do you have the mute turned on to one or both of your?
Okay, so let's try this then.
Your phone.
Let's try this.
On your phone.
Perfect. And for those of you who are watching, we will get started in just a moment. Once I figure this out. Perfect. And for those of you who are watching, we will get started in a moment. So it's definitely the speakers that are causing that. Once I figure this out. And for those of you who are watching, we will get started in a moment. So it's definitely the speakers that are causing that. I believe so.
Try turning the volume down on
Where's the volume no longer appearing? That's not what I want. Okay, how is that going?
something wrong with the sound coming out of that laptop.
Okay. I go with this instead. Apologize, I know it's 6:01. We'll get started in just a second.
No problem.
Welcome to 2020, people. I know it's 6:01. We'll get started in just a second.
No problem.
Welcome to 2020, people. I mean, at least we're not getting the endless echo that we were getting a moment ago. Welcome to 2020, people. I mean, at least we're not getting the endless echo that we were getting a moment ago. Welcome to 2020, people. I wonder if it could be your computer toning. We need you to mute yours.
Okay. I've turned my speakers down.
Could be your computer toning. Yeah. We need you to.
That's all I've got running. Turn my speakers down.
Could be your computer toning. Yeah. We need you to.
That's all I've got running.
Okay. I think we're getting close to figure this out. Okay. I think we're getting close to figure this out. Well, on that note, we might as well get started. We will be having someone else join us in a moment, but thanks to all, since we have some people who are checking us out, and on that note, we might as well get started. And thank you for the waves, everyone. Someone else join us in a moment, but thanks to all, since we have some people who are checking us out, and on that note, we might as well get started. And thank you for the waves, everyone. Thanks to all, since we have some people who are checking us out, and we might as well. Yeah. Thank you for the waves, everyone. Thanks to. So, apologies for a bit of an echo going on. We will look to minimize that as much as we can. But just want to get us quickly started with a land acknowledgement. Apologies for a bit of an echo going on. No. We'll look to minimize that as much as we can. But just want to that is not being minimized. A land acknowledgement. Apologies for a bit of an echo going on. We'll look to minimize that as much. Okay, let's try that and see how that goes. Not hearing any echo, so. And we are, okay. Sorry for that, everyone. Let's try that and see how that goes. Oh, no. Never mind. Welcome to 2020. Echo, so. Because that echo is now back. And we are, okay. Sorry for that.
Is restarting the zoom an option?
Okay, now we might have solved the problem. You can tell people that I am a mental health programs coordinator, not a technology coordinator, or any kind of director or anything like that. So we are going to give a shout out to another Mac staff member, Matt Adams, who has been helping me troubleshoot this and picking up on my careless mistakes that I have been making. So thank you all for bearing with us. I know it's a couple minutes later than we were originally intended to get started, but it's seeming like we figured that out. Which, yeah. For those of you who might be wondering about the echo, it was truly me having Facebook open at the same time as Zoom and just not realizing that that would be an issue. So now to get into that land acknowledgement I talked about 7 minutes ago. With gratitude and respect, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Today, this land is home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this territory. And thank you to Tony and to Matt England for joining us here tonight. And so as it says on the event, but just to quickly recap, welcome to Queer Tarot. And tonight we want to do as we head into the holidays season, which is a time for very traditionally like Christian spiritual practices, we wanted to take the time to kind of carve out space for other ways that LGBTQ2+ guys, connect with their spirituality, as many of us do not identify with the mainstream organized religions, and so express their spirituality and their connection to the world, and talk about mindfulness and those practices as we head into the holidays. And so I figure we should probably start with a round of introductions, and I will begin. So my name is Spencer Pecor. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Max's mental health programs coordinator. And so why don't we bounce it off to you next, Tony?
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name's Tony Imbrogno. I'm from Calgary, as you might notice from the hockey jersey on the wall there. I've decamped here for the holidays so that I was able to quarantine safely and well, take care of my mental health in a sense by coming out here. And otherwise I live in Ottawa, work for the federal government, and have been toying with tarot in my spare time.
And Matt England.
I'm Matthew England, he, him. I am fairly new to Ottawa. I've been here about 2 years now. I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. Yeah. And am I supposed to say what I know about tarot? Sorry.
Tarot and spiritual practice and yeah.
Okay, so a little bit more. I first encountered tarot and readings and alternative spirituality when I first started therapy in my early 30s. I found that I was really missing kind of a way to deal with all the emotions that were coming up. So I started having readings and doing other things kind of affiliated with tarot. And so I think it's like any kind of relationship. A lot of times I find I need to build trust with the person that's doing the reading. And once that's established, then it's been a great experience for me. And are we going to have a chance to talk more about free spirits later, or did you want me to do that now?
Yes, I figured we would end off by making sure everyone had the chance to plug their items, if you will. But so, just so that we're not kind of making an assumption about what everyone knows and where everyone's starting from, how would you feel, Tony, about giving us a bit of an overview on what tarot even is?
Sure, I can do my best there. Sort of have to go back to the late Middle Ages when playing cards enter Europe from Moorish Spain, and that's the traditional 4-suit deck that we're used to seeing playing card games, Go Fish and that kind of thing. I've actually read that the 4-suit idea comes from China, but I haven't been able to read more about that. So my knowledge is still to grow, and I have more to learn. But essentially it arrives right around the time that the Renaissance in northern Italy is taking off. And what we have in museums today are some very intricately drawn cards with allegorical images used to make the cards. So what ends up happening is the four suit deck, a fifth suit is added. And this suit is usually regarded as the major arcana. And for game playing in Renaissance Italy, they're the trump cards. They're the cards that can sort of overtake at will the any of the four suits. What ends up happening is the imagery used on those cards is very much reflective of the time period. So you have Greek and Roman mythology being rediscovered by a Christianized Europe. You have as I said, you had the influence of the Moorish culture. And so you get these, what I think you could term mythological images that start to make their way onto the playing cards. And then various decks are made throughout Europe. There's German versions, French versions, and Swiss versions. By about the 1700s, the tarot comes back, but less as a game and more around the interest of the occult, other kinds of secret societies. And tarot becomes used for what you could call divination, or maybe more colloquially as fortune telling. And at that time, there's this idea that the tarot is connected to Egypt, other parts of the world, but the scholarship has largely put that aside and has focused more on the Renaissance as where this five-suited deck comes together. And then by the time of the 1800s and the early 20th century, you have the cards enter Britain, and a man named Waite and a woman named Smith basically make one of the most famous decks of tarot that we have today. It's referred to as the Rider. Rider was the company, but Rider Waite Smith deck. And that's the deck probably most people have seen in pop culture. I was just watching a James Bond movie and boom, there was tarot cards, and it was this imagery. But those images are very much mythological and have come to be used to describe what others in the scholarship would call the journey of the mythological hero, which has been studied to have psychological benefits for people. And we learn lessons from mythology. And so tarot is just another way, in a sense, to tell one story, and to acknowledge that you're the hero of your own journey.
Sorry, I apologize. Just also making sure that I monitor any comments coming up. But yeah, so because the hero's myth in that story, that's basically like you go back to even ancient Greece, and even beyond that, that kind of, as you said, people have always looked to know the future and connect with the world around them and understand the world and kind of use that to understand themselves. And hearing that tarot is one format of this that's kind of changed and modified throughout history, but is part of like a larger story that we have in connection to the world. Mm-hmm. And so we talked at the start of this, like this is a event about like the queer experience of spirituality and like an understanding of that relationship. And the way we first came into contact, Tony, was when you proposed this idea of like queering the tarot. And so can you tell us a little more about that specifically?
Yes, so I suppose what I had in mind was to do a workshop, and COVID restrictions, I thought I didn't want to do a virtual, so I thought I'd save that idea for when we could gather. So I turned it more into, a virtual readings where those interested could come and we could do a reading and we could examine a little bit of what the symbols mean. And I tried to connect sometimes it's just an innocuous thing. People do it for fun. But when connected to, say, mindfulness and to, as you said, queer spirituality, then at least in my experience, that has generated a lot of benefits and a lot of self-confidence. It's helped me look for my authentic self. It's helped me to tell the story of my life in a way that eventually it might have happened, but the tarot, its structure, the mythology has been able to be a tool for me to put that forward. So I thought during some rough times that maybe I could give back in a sense to the community. So that's where the idea came from. And so I wanted to queer it in the sense because that's how I would identify. And so being that way, I don't know how else to say it, really means that I have that lens on the mythology and the symbols, and that perhaps I could do that for other identifying persons. One of the things that I noticed when I could do readings, because I did them in person prior to COVID, is that, you know, the assumption was that I was into girls. And when those readings occurred, I was like, okay, I'm not about to correct the person. I was there for more than just that. But at some point, I was like, okay, this assumption needs to not happen, because it's just, well, it may or may not be the case. That's probably something I'm still exploring in a sense. But it was that assumption that was starting to perhaps get in the way of the mindfulness and the exploration of authenticity that I was aiming for. So in terms of queering the tarot, it was trying to understand that, you know, the gay sensibility is very much part of mythology. And the more that I study mythology and read about the tarot itself, the more that I realize that actually a lot of that symbolism carries through. So we talked before, as you mentioned when we were discussing this about you know, queer spirituality and the book Queer Magic, that did a bit of a survey of queerness in mythology. And what I've discovered through a lot of that is those stories and those symbols are present in the tarot. It's just you kind of have to have the right lenses on to draw that out, because, you know, as we all know, the assumption made for a long time is that of particular ways of being in the world. And so if that's the way the tarot is read, then all the other parts of it can start to fall away. And I wanted to put that back in to sort of show that mythology is far more diverse than sometimes a Disney movie might give it credit, for example, not to knock Disney movies, but you know what I'm saying? The stories are a lot more complicated than maybe we're used to. And so there's so much queerness in it that I was, even myself, quite surprised.
Yeah, so you actually said two things in there I think are really interesting and really relevant. One, actually, just to make sure I'm understanding and I'm on the same page, is that idea of like when you would receive readings from other people and when you were kind of first getting involved in the practice and in that community, just as like every single literal other structure in our lives, there's this assumption of, yeah, heterosexuality, which is obviously going to impact, you know, what you take away from the reading and what they're saying about you. So a part of your involvement in exploration comes from like wanting to tell your own story and understand yourself better. And then it sounds like as you experience that, there was that desire to then provide that space for other queer identified people to not have those assumptions kind of put on them. Which absolutely, I feel like there's that kind of understanding with tarot. It's like, because it's not like fortune telling or that they're going to like know the inner secrets of your lives, and it really is more of a story, and those mistakes can come up, but it also comes from like, at the end of the day, we are human beings looking to interpret something, and again, we put our own lens on it, as you said, and that lens is too often outside of our spaces, that you know, assumption of heterosexuality. And then well, first of all, I'll give you the space to be like, you know, did I misinterpret anything there, or, you know, anything?
No, thank you. You know, that's precisely it. You know, and I've read for people who identify as straight. I've read for people who identify as queer, and the idea is that the symbols in the mythology are very human, and you know, when looking at cultures, ancient cultures, the diversity of practices that were, you know, let's say in the mythology is far more than you might get in, you know, in a deck that was drawn in 1909, where, you know, they're on a surface level you wouldn't see a queer identified anything. But the idea is that it is there. It just needs to be drawn out. It needs to be more understood. And that's, and that process has allowed me to get into touch with my own identity in a way, and to hear more about what's going on in the community. That's one of the things that I maybe never really did as a young adult, was be involved in the community. I was doing my own thing. I really didn't know what was going on and didn't want to be a part of it. And so in a sense, I sometimes think I missed out, but I can lament that, but I shouldn't live in that. It's about moving forward and doing what I can now to explore that. And tarot has been one tool, certainly, to do that. And I think that's a good,
Hearing
I
that
think
you-
you did a
yeah,
good
it's
summary
helped
for me.
you
Thank you.
strengthen your bond to the queer community as a whole as you've gotten involved in this.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that you said was really interesting, and I'd like to invite Matt England to share his thoughts on this, because I know he's also read the book Queer Magic and is a big fan, and as he mentioned at the beginning, is going to be leading a spirituality group at Max, which he'll tell us more about later. But this idea that there we go, yeah, this idea that really queer people and queer sexuality has been a lot more involved in religion and in spirituality than we think, and that we kind of maybe take that for granted. So yeah, I would love to hear your perspective on that, Matt England, and tell me more.
Yeah. So here, this is probably not the best angle, but it is what it is. Yeah, for me,